This morning's scripture readings come from the book of Proverbs and contain selected proverbs on the young and the old. The glory of young men is their strength. The splendor of old men is their gray hair. I didn't write these. Gray hair is a crown of glory. Okay. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. Grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of sons is their fathers. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. This is God's word.
You can go ahead and be seated. Well, that's awesome. I love that. We just got to hear scriptures read about the young and the old. I'm just going to go ahead and put this down here real quick. And you got to see various generations pray for one another, which I don't know about you, but was super moving for me to witness. And yet, I'll add this, and yet, if we can be a little bit honest with ourselves, I think we can all admit that the differences between generations are not always positive all the time. Right, if you think about what actually characterizes your day-to-day experience, for so many of you, like your daily experience is affected in some way or another by some form of generational resentment, even if the seeds of it are small. Maybe it's in your workplace. You have that one coworker who is 25 to 30 years older than you and who just cannot seem to be able, or who just chooses to not seem to be able to learn the new software, even though it affects all the rest of your team. Or conversely, you have that coworker who's 30 years younger than you, who already wants to be made a manager, but who can't turn in their reports on time, right? In the workplace, we can feel these seeds of generational resentment. Or maybe it's in your family. You're here this morning and you're in high school, and while, yes, deep down, technically you love and respect your parents, it seems to be the case that there is so much of your day-to-day experience that they just cannot seem to grasp, and you've given up trying to help explain to them. Or you're a parent, and you look at your child, and the thought, at least once a day, crosses your mind, I would never have done fill in the blank when I was their age. Generational resentment. It's at least as old as Socrates, who over 2,000 years ago complained of the younger generation that our youth now love luxury, they have bad manners, contempt for authority, they show disrespect for elders, and they love chatter instead of exercise, right? This goes a while back. And yet, it is generational resentment. It's not only something that we can experience towards other ages, we can also harbor feelings of resentment about our own age, right? Go to Starbucks at 8 a.m. on a weekday morning, and I'll tell you what you will see. You will see a bunch of 12-year-olds desperately dressing up as 18-year-olds, long to be older than we are. And of course, I did the same. And then when I was in high school, what did I want? I longed to be out from under my parents' roof and in college. And then when I was in college, I remember distinctly longing to just get out of college and start my life and my career. When I was first starting my career as a pastor, I wished I was already more established in it. At many ages, you just wish you were older than you are. And then, when you get older, what happens? You desperately wish you were younger than you are. I just saw in 2017, the model, Cara Delevingne, she became the new face of Dior's anti-aging skincare line, which is tellingly named Capture Youth. Capture Youth. Basically, they had explained their previous skincare lines were targeted at women ages 40 to 50. And yet, what they're aiming for with Capture Youth is to target women in their mid-20s with this skincare cream so that they can, quote unquote, delay the signs of aging before they appear. On Instagram right now, there are around 1 million hashtags with the hashtag aging. There are around 7.5 million hashtags anti-aging. We long to be younger than we are. Susan Sontag wrote in an essay titled "The Double Standard of Aging" that what now amounts to the latter 2/3 of everyone's life is shadowed by a poignant apprehension of unremitting loss. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning, right? Generational resentment, in other words. It's not only a dynamic that we experience among one another socially. It's something we experience within ourselves emotionally. So we've been in this series in the book of Proverbs called Walk This Way. What we're doing is we're taking the collected wisdom of Proverbs on all these various spheres of life. We've looked at parenting, and we've looked at how to make decisions. We've looked at our emotional life. And this morning we're looking at our age. And I want to tell you that the really good news that Proverbs offers is the good news of a fresh perspective on age and the process of aging. It's a healing perspective. It's a redeeming perspective. Proverbs, it helps us to see our own age as well as the age of the people around us as gifts rather than burdens. And it is such a better way of making it through life. So that's what we're going to look at this morning. If you have a Bible or want to use one in the seats in front of you, we're going to be doing as we've been doing, where we're looking at various proverbs that together form a tapestry of wisdom on this topic of aging. And what we're going to discover in the Proverbs this morning is 3 perspective shifts. 3 perspective shifts that the Proverbs give us on our age. And my hope is that if we can just grasp these shifts a little bit more this morning, we'll be a lot better able to receive our age as a gift and then to give it back to others as a blessing. And so that's where we're going this morning. 3 perspective shifts the Proverbs give us on age. The first one is this. It's that rather than wishing you were a different age than you are, you need to see that each age holds unique opportunities. Each age holds unique opportunities. This is a theme. It's emphasized from the very beginning in the book of Proverbs. The whole book begins with a father speaking to his proverbial son, telling him, lean in, listen to what I have to say, because youth is the season to learn. He reminds his son in chapter 1 that the whole point of the Proverbs are to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. In other words, this book is youth-oriented. A few verses later, in the same chapter, he tells his son, hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. This is a theme that we'll see repeating itself throughout the entirety of the book. Proverbs 23, listen to your father who gave you life. Do not despise your mother when she is old. Presumably, this last proverb is being addressed to a slightly older version of a still young son who's old enough to see his parents aging and think, oh, they have nothing left to tell me. And he's saying, even then, don't despise what they have to say. Each age holds unique opportunities, and youth holds this unique opportunity to learn. The foolish young person will resent the fact that they have not yet arrived. The wise young person will be grateful for the opportunity to learn. Now you might hear this and might say, well, duh, like that's completely obvious. I didn't need to come to church this morning to hear that. And yet, how many of us live like this is true? Right? How many, let me just ask, if you're a teenager here this morning, how many of you wake up in the morning with this thought in your head? What a privilege. I can't believe that I get to live in a home that someone else is paying for. And I get to eat food every day that someone else is providing. That I have this gracious, many-year window of opportunity where God in his grace has given me no adult responsibilities. And all I get to do every single day is learn about the life I will one day live. Is this real life? Like how many of you, honestly, how many of you have that perspective, right? We don't think this way. I certainly didn't think this way. When you are younger, you rarely recognize the window of opportunity that you have to learn. I remember when I first started serving as a pastor, I had just turned 24. I was in this teeny church. We had a staff of 3. It was me, my senior pastor, Pastor Ken, and our office manager. I was also just beginning seminary at the time. And when I look back on that, it was 3.5 years at that church, by and large, I did not recognize the opportunity for what it was. Every time Pastor Ken would get up and would preach a sermon on a Sunday, you know what my thought was? I could do it better. Seriously. I should be teaching him how to illustrate a sermon, right? And I regret to say that's what I thought. Only begrudgingly would I do what he would ask me to do, even though he was my boss. In my mind, even as I would do it, I would critique and second guess the thing I was being asked to do. I resented being made to wait. And yes, there were parts of me that wished maybe he was a little more proactive in investing in me. And yet, I was not a hungry learner. Like if knowing Pastor Ken, if I had gone back, and if in that period of time I had said to him, Pastor Ken, can I buy you lunch? And can you just give me all the wisdom you have on how to counsel someone who's dealing with grief? That would have been a gold mine of wisdom, knowing him. And I just didn't even see it. And so youth, it offers this precious opportunity to learn without the pressure of greater responsibilities. And yet rarely do we recognize it when it's there and step fully into it. You know, it's fascinating. Among the 4 Gospels, these 4 accounts of Jesus' life, there's only one chapter of one gospel that describes Jesus' youth. It's Luke chapter 2. You get this little snippet from when Jesus is 12 years old. And you know the only thing that Luke pictures Jesus doing is learning. It's actually kind of a funny scene. Jesus' parents, they go to Jerusalem. They accidentally leave him behind in a trip to Jerusalem. And when they finally come back and find the 12-year-old Jesus, here's what they find him doing. It says after 3 days, they found him in the temple sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. Part of the wisdom of Jesus is that even he, the Son of God, didn't skip over this phase. And so if you're here this morning and you're younger, let me ask you this, in the settings that you're already in, is there a proactive step you can take to learn? Again, maybe it's at your work. Is there an older colleague that you could just take the coffee or take the lunch and say, what advice would you give me at this stage in my career? Or youth, it could be as simple as spending the last 15 minutes of youth group. Go to a youth leader. Just say to them, hey, I got this kind of weird question, but it's about blank. Do you know how much they would love to be approached in that way? They would welcome that. Of course, the opposite is also true. Just as youth provides this opportunity to learn, age provides the opportunity to teach. And so if you are here this morning and you are old, and I'm purposefully not defining old, because, right, that can mean different things. Old can mean you're a great-grandparent, but old can also mean you're 46, but you're the oldest one in your department at work. Old can mean you're a senior in high school, but you're older than all the other youth. So you take old to mean what you need it to mean, because you can be young in one context and old in another. But if you are old, you have a unique opportunity to teach. Again, when Proverbs says, hear, my son, your father's instruction, forsake not your mother's teaching, it simply assumes that your father and mother are teaching, right? It's really easy to feel like a little bit resentful or maybe even a little bit insecure about being the oldest person in a setting that you're in. So maybe you're the oldest couple in your community group here at church, and you and your spouse have been talking, and you have the thought that, gosh, like, are we getting outdated? Do these people, are we even in the right setting? Should we find another group? And yet, I encourage you, just step into the unique opportunity that you have to pass on what you have learned. Even the things you've learned the hard way about life, work, marriage, following Jesus, the New Testament, it's just filled with exhortations for old men to pour into younger men, older women to invest in younger women. In my experience, the old miss opportunities to teach as often as the young miss opportunities to learn. It plagues all of us. And so, similar question. If you are older, in the settings you're already in, what is a proactive step you can take to teach? Maybe you're in your 80s and you have a friend at church who's just turning 65 and they're about to retire. Could you proactively make the first move and say, hey, can I buy you coffee? I want to tell you some things I've learned about how to stay sharp in retirement. Like so often we feel a little bit sheepish about this. Like, oh, who am I to presume that I have something to pass on? Isn't that a little bit prideful? You got to get over that. Seriously. You have something to give, even if it's what you've learned from mistakes. And do you know how well received that proactive step would be? And so this is the first perspective shift that Proverbs helps us to embrace. It's that instead of resenting or fearing the age that you are, you can recognize that each age holds unique opportunities. Each age holds unique opportunities. Here's the second shift. You see it on the screen. Rather than resenting the age of others, you can recognize that each age brings unique gifts. I love this proverb, Proverbs chapter 20. The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Now, obviously, this is worded in the wording of men because it's in the immediate context. A father writing to a son, he wants him to think of himself as a young man or an old man. It applies equally to men and women. The glory of the young is their strength. The splendor of the old is their gray hair. What is this proverb teaching? It's saying that each age has something glorious about it. Each age has something splendid to add. Each age can bless the others with a unique splendor. When it says the glory of the young is their strength, that word, it's a holistic word. It's talking about vitality in all of its forms, physical vitality. Your heart, did you know this? Your heart starts declining in its capacity to pump blood in its mid-20s. I'm 35, I'm a distance runner, and already I am well past my physical peak cardiovascularly. The glory of the young is their strength, mental clarity. I read this past week that your rapid recall, ability to just recall facts, dates, so forth, that peaks in your 20s. It was Harvard Medical School study. Short-term memory is strongest around age 25. It stays more or less steady till 35, and then at 35 begins declining. So church, you've got some decline coming for me. Think about Jesus, his 12 disciples, 11 of whom would later go on to found the first church, right, and to take the gospel out beyond the borders of Israel. Why did Jesus not choose older men? In many ways, it seems like that would have been wiser. Why did Jesus not choose people who were less impulsive than Peter, right? He was always putting his foot in his mouth. Why did Jesus not choose people with more perspective and restraint than James and John, for example? Well, I don't ultimately know, but I've got to imagine that at least part of the reason is that he had a heavy lift for his early disciples, and he needed their strength. Right? The glory of the young is their strength. I think about this here at Hope Church when we see all the young parents running around, right? The moms and the dads who Sunday after Sunday are like chasing their kids around and out the door and playing with them in the fellowship hall and coming out to the snack time sweaty. I look at that and I say the glory of the young is their strength, right? Or I think about our young adults who, remember back 6 months ago, 50 of our 20s and 30 somethings walked 27 miles across the city of Albuquerque from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., praying over the entire city and finished on top of Sandia Crest, right? The glory of the young is their strength. And our children. There's so many children running around. If you came to our kids' carnival this May and you saw our kids just dunking pastor after pastor in the dunk tank, right? Again and again and again. The glory of the young is their strength, right? Their vitality. And at one level, this is obvious. We appreciate the strength of the young. Who doesn't revel in it? And yet, can it also not be hard to maintain this perspective? That the glory of the young is their strength in my own life. In my own moments of fatigue or self-centeredness, for example, I can find myself resenting the vitality of my kids. Right? I don't always want to play goalie. Right? I don't always want to wrestle with them. I don't want to do the funny voice that they begged me for because I already did it 20 times. It's burdensome. Right? In the actual moments of life, we can resent the vitality of the young. Or in the church, right? Everyone loves the idea of young people in the church. But do you like the style of music that younger people like? Do you appreciate the volume at which it's played, right? And so at the lived level, the strength of the young, it can feel like a burden sometimes, but how much freer and more grateful would we feel if we could more regularly remember that the glory of the young is their strength, right? Their vitality. Likewise, the splendor of the old is their gray hair. You know, it's fascinating. Do a little study of gray hair in the scriptures. Gray hair in the Bible can often be the sign of acquired wisdom. Now, I use the words can often be because even Proverbs itself, it acknowledges that gray hair isn't always a symbol of wisdom, but only when it's combined with a righteous life. Here's Proverbs 16, gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. That second line, it adds an important qualification. For gray hair to be a crown of glory, it has to have been gained in a righteous life. Similarly to the young, for the young's strength to be a glory and not a burden, it has to have been strength that's channeled in a righteous direction. Likewise, for gray hair to be a crown of glory rather than a sign of depletion, it has to have been gained in a righteous life. So this is true. Like when you think about it. When I think about the older people I know who have gray hair, if they have lived a life of self-centeredness and lesser pursuits, their gray hair is not a crown of glory. If anything, it calls attention to their diminishment. Here's a picture on the screen of Hugh Hefner. I mentioned him earlier in the series. He's the founder of Playboy magazine. This is him towards the end of his life. You can see he has gray hair. And yet his gray hair is not a crown of glory. His gray hair says, here's an old man play acting the vitality of a young man. In the book of Hosea, there's this kind of challenging picture. Idolatrous Israel is at one point personified as an old man losing his vitality without even recognizing it. It says, strangers devour his strength and he knows it not. Gray hairs are sprinkled upon him and he knows it not. All that to say, gray hair is not automatically a picture of wisdom, and yet all the more splendid when it is. When it's gained in a righteous life. Just as the young at their best bring the gift of vitality, the old at their best bring the gift of wisdom. Gray hair communicates this person has weathered storms. This person has mined mysteries. This person has fought and gained perspective. If you're in your under 30 this morning, I just want you, when this service is done, we mingle for a little bit, just look around the sanctuary and just notice the gray hair around you. And as you notice it, I want you to think to yourself, where did this gray hair come from? This gray hair, it came from decades of honing a fruitful career that blesses others and adds something to its field. For others, this gray hair came from years of serving as elders and deacons and Sunday school teachers, keeping this church steady season after season. Maybe this gray hair came from losing loved ones too soon and becoming a person of depth and of character as they walked this marathon path of grief. It came from caring for children with special needs and having every last ounce of self-centeredness ground out of them. If you're young, it's so easy to underappreciate or even resent the gray hair among you. Your snap judgment says gray hair represents the people you have to adjust around or put up with or even sacrifice for. But if we could just see it the way that Proverbs sees it, right? Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. And so you can ask yourself, whatever age you are, how can I better appreciate the unique gifts that every age brings, whether strength or wisdom? What am I overlooking in another generation? Likewise, you could ask yourself, am I fully bringing the gift of my own age to the table? You could think about it in the context of the church, for example. One of the things I love about Hope Church and I celebrate about our church is that we're an intergenerational church where people bring their unique gift to the table. The youth bring their strength, the old bring their wisdom. Like, I don't know if you fully realize how much our young adults do around here. They serve in hospitality. They pour themselves out for our youth and our children. They serve every single week in worship and tech. They are checked in. They're not checked out. I think about a few months ago, several of our young adults hosted a seminar for our seniors on fall prevention. That's entirely led by the young people. We've got middle schoolers and high schoolers in our church serving in the sound booth, helping in kids' classroom. And so if you're young, I just want to challenge you. Like, bring your vitality now to the table. Like, you have so much strength. You may feel tired. You're only going to feel more tired later. You have strength to give. Pour it at the feet of Jesus, right? There's too much vitality in you to give it to fringe hobbies. Like, bless the local church. Bless your community with it. And if you're an older saint, right, thank you for blessing the church with perspective and with wisdom. Some of you are leading discipleship groups where you are just imparting weekly wisdom on work and on life and on marriage to people who are younger than you. Or others of you are serving as elders and as deacons or continuing to give back in our children's ministry. So if you're older, I want to just challenge you with the same thing. We need your wisdom. All right, first point was each age holds unique opportunities. Second, each age brings unique gifts. Here's the last one. Each age contains unique delights. Here's Proverbs 17. Grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of sons is their fathers. That word crown and that word glory, these words are in parallel here. This proverb is teaching that there is a unique way in which each generation can delight in, even boast in the others. I was really grateful to have had a fairly close relationship with my grandfather, my dad's dad, Stan Friedman. Stan Friedman, he had a really hard start to his life. He grew up poor in New York City. His father, he never knew. His father left him when he was under 2 years old. He left his mom holding the bag. So my grandfather, Stan, was raised by a single mom, a bunch of kids in the middle of New York City. He had to work really hard. He told me at one point like what age he was when he got his first job. I think it was 9 or 10. He had to help provide for the family. And what I really admire about him, there were so many times in my grandfather's life when it would have been so easy for him to like give in to bitterness and resentment. And yet that's just not the person he was. He met my grandmother in community college. They got married young. They had 5 kids, one of whom was my dad's. That's actually part of the inspiration for my wife and I to have 5 kids. He raised them well. All my aunts and uncles, he imparted values, hard work, diligence. He delighted in his kids and his kids' kids. And my grandpa, he never became a Christian to my knowledge, even though we talked about these things. And yet I still remember when I got married, when I was 23, he wrote me just the kindest letter that he gave me on the night before my wedding. And he said something, I remember he used the word shepherd. He said something to the effect of, Ben, you're becoming a shepherd of a family now, and later you will become the shepherd of a flock. He had this delight in me as his grandchild. And then when I went on to have kids, he had this delight in his great-grandchildren. Here's a picture of him with Hudson, our middle child, when Hudson was younger. This is my grandfather delighting in Hudson. And one of the really unique delights of this age is delighting in seeing the impact you've had, the values you've held, reflected back to you in another generation. See, I didn't have a mega close relationship with my grandfather, but I knew that he delighted in us, and at least part of that shape of delight came from seeing that the things he deeply cared about were continuing. We're being embodied one generation after the next. We were a sign back to him that the beautiful life he wanted to impart was taking hold. So there's this unique delight. There are probably some of you this morning who wish you had grandchildren, but don't. And yet, even if that's you, I just want to encourage you. There is such a wide application of this. This can apply to spiritual grandchildren. This can apply to people you've invested in any way, shape, or form. They can become for you, even if they're not related by blood, a source of feedback and a source of delight. Some of you, again, have been Sunday school teachers for decades, and you have grown spiritual children who are reflecting the life you've wanted to impart into them. Others of you, likewise, wish you had that kind of spiritual legacy, and you might feel regret. You might say, oh, I can imagine what you're describing, but I don't feel it. And I just want to encourage you, if that's you, it is never too late to begin giving yourself away for another generation. Conversely, it says the glory of children is their fathers. Right? What child does not long to boast in their own parents? Right? Kids revel in the ability to say, my mom or my dad or my coach cared for me, protected me. They have great things planned for me. They do cool things. One of the first days of school this year, our third grade daughter, Karis, told her teacher, my dad baptizes people. He said, my dad read us all the Chronicles of Narnia. And you know what happened? She tells me now when she gets in on a Monday morning, her teacher asked her, did your dad baptize anyone this past weekend? Right? Like, kids delight in their parents, even their broken, imperfect parents. Kids have the ability to delight in. And I know that some of you are grown and you feel a pain in your heart because you never fully got the chance to delight in your father or mother the way that you can see would be good. And yet, let me encourage you, if that's you, you can redeem that. You can redeem that and pass on. You can be the one who a child and a grandchild delights in. So grandchildren are the crown of the age. The glory of sons is their fathers. Here's the question. How can you find unique delight in someone who is another age? How can you find unique delight in someone who's another age? I delight in the older women of this church who greet me every Sunday and who a few of them even give me a little kiss right there. Yeah, I delight in the old men in our church who I know at around the same point in the same service every week I'm going to banter with. Right? And I delight in the 8-year-old in our church who just about every Sunday asks me, Pastor Ben, what are you preaching on today? And I delight in the little babies in our church who I see wrapped up on their mothers. Right? If you're part of this church and you're under 30, I pray that you would just cherish the reality that you are covered with layer after layer after layer of wisdom and perspective that is over you, with decade after decade of people who are rooting for your good, who are available to you, that you would delight in that covering over you. And if you're older in this church, if you're over 70, here's my prayer. I pray that you would cherish the reality that coming up underneath you are layer after layer of vitality and creativity and energy, that you don't have to sink into despair because the future of the church is in good hands. So whatever age you are, I pray you would delight in the unique gifts of another age. One way of healing generational resentment is with generational delight. And so you can pray. Here's a prayer. Father, give me eyes to see and a heart to delight. Turning around from generational resentment into generational delight. It is such a sign of a changed heart that in the New Testament, one of the very ways that people prepared to meet Jesus was by doing just that. In fact, if you go to the Old Testament, you read the very last chapter of the Old Testament, the book of Malachi. It predicts the coming of John the Baptist. He was the one who would prepare the way for people to meet Jesus. And in preparing for him, it says he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. That's generational resentment into generational delight. And it's a sign of getting ready to meet Jesus. And so we've looked at these 3 shifts this morning that Proverbs gives us. Instead of generational resentment, we can realize that each age holds unique opportunities. Each age, it brings these unique gifts. And each age contains these unique delights. Here are 2 implications as we go away. First, we just need each other. We desperately need one another. If you're young and you have all the strength in the world, but you find yourself often feeling overwhelmed or paralyzed by what seem like endless options in front of you, you don't have to do it alone. You have people with perspective you can run to, and you need them to help you navigate that. Likewise, if you are older and you've gained wisdom, and yet you feel a pain in your heart that you just don't have the opportunities anymore to put it into practice when it would have mattered, you have young people who you need to run to and give it to them. God designs it this way so that we realize we need each other. And then also, we need Christ. You know, very practically speaking, at the very practical level, one of the best ways to grow in your appreciation of another generation, of maintaining this perspective that Proverbs gives, is to look at Jesus and to look at him for a long time. Why is that? You see, when we look at Jesus, you see a picture of wisdom and of vitality combined. The more you look at Jesus, the more you will see ageless wisdom coming through. And the more you will long for timeless wisdom. And as you long for it, you'll look around and see where you can get it, and it will be in the old. And the more you look at Jesus, the more you see endless vitality coming through. And the more it'll make you long for vitality. And when you look around at where you get it in the young. And so it's by looking at Jesus and continuing to look to him that you actually grow in your longing for and appreciation of the generations that God has brought into your life. One of my favorite images of Jesus in the whole Bible, it comes from Revelation chapter 1. In this chapter, the Apostle John, he sees this vision of Jesus revealed in the heavenly realms. And it's this picture of Jesus walking among the lampstands, which represent the churches that he's overseeing. And after seeing that, John says this about Jesus. He says, the hairs of his head were white, like white wool, like snow, and his eyes were like a flame of fire. The white hair represents perfect wisdom. Infinite perspective. And the eyes like a flame of fire, it represents endless passion and vitality. In Jesus, you see the wisdom of the age and the strength of the young combined into this endless, ageless person. And that's who we worship as a church. That's where we draw our wisdom from. That's where we draw our vitality from. It's why when you see a young person who's walking closely with Jesus, you often find that they're wise beyond their years. It's also why when you see an old person who's walking closely with Jesus, it's why you often find they still have a fire in their bones. Because they're drawing it all from Jesus, which is also why we worship him generation after generation after generation. And so we're going to sing one last song this morning. We've sang it many times before. It's called Holy Forever, and I love how the song begins. It begins with these words. They say, 1,000 generations falling down in worship, sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And that's our heartbeat, and that's our prayer this morning as we bring the gifts of our age to the person of Jesus. Will you pray with me? Lord Jesus, we admire you. We admire your endless, reliable wisdom. And we thank you for the way you've distributed much of that among the older among us. And Lord Jesus, we admire just the bottomless vitality you seem to have, and we are grateful for the way you've distributed so much of that among the young. Lord, I pray, Jesus, you would turn us in reliance towards one another and ultimately towards you. Lord, we offer this worship back to you right now. I pray this in your name. Amen.